Members. So a little bit of background on June 5th of this year at the Council's last meeting. The Council conducted an appeal hearing upon 5 different appeals to a Zoning Board of Adjustment approval of a proposed educational institution to be located at 112 North Main Street within the Central Business Zoning District. The City Council, after consideration of, the City Council considered the arguments presented by all 5 appellants, and upon the appeal from Ryan Pilgrim, decided to remand the matter in part back to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Council moved to remand the matter back to the board based upon criteria 4 and 7 and provided staff with direction that additional public parking availability counts be conducted over the noon hour and that the board review the methods of parking mitigation calculation. Staff advised the council that the instructions of remand should be in writing so the board had clear instruction from the council, and that's what we're here this evening to review to make sure that what has been drafted adequately captures the intent of the council and provides that instruction to the Board of Adjustment in their reconsideration of the matter. From the direction received from the council, it appeared that it was the intent of the council to remand the matter to the board with additional parking use information in order for the board to consider that additional information in determining conformance with criteria number 4 and 7. Additionally, the council gave direction that they wish for the board to conduct an additional review of the method of parking mitigation calculation. As you may recall, there was a calculation that was completed to determine what the typical parking demand for the building would be underneath typical common commercial uses, and that there was that was compared to the educational institution, and the method of mitigation was the difference between those two was required for the use. During the council's deliberation, the council did not appear to give direction that the board conduct a new public hearing to take additional public testimonies. That's something we wanted to confirm that was the intent of the council this evening. It also appeared that the purpose was to further consideration of criteria number 4 and 7, as I mentioned, and to collect that additional information that was not available during the initial hearing and enter that information into the record, and further to review the parking mitigation calculation, as I mentioned. Staff did receive a couple inquiries regarding the draft remand instructions and the lack of the specific reference to criteria number 4 and 7 that were included in the motion that the council had made. To ensure that the remand instructions accurately reflect the council's intent, staff is recommending a minor amendment to that instruction, number 3, to include the direction for the review against those 2 specific criteria. So the amended item number 3 would read that the board review criteria number 4 and criteria 7 of the reason statement of relevant criteria and standards signed on May 3rd, 2017, considering the prior record and the additional information to be entered into the record in conjunction with these remand instructions, and make a decision upon the conditional use permit application. So that would provide direction to the board that they are to consider both the record that was prepared before as well as the additional parking count information the council wished the board to have, and then consider that information in the context of criteria number 4 and number 7 as the motion seemed to indicate from the council's decision on this matter. Staff would recommend approval of the order of remand and instructions with further consideration with the proposed amendment as was suggested by staff this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Catherine?
You said that you could have a public hearing and then you could take more testimony. The Board of Adjustment could have a public hearing and take more testimony? It
was our understanding that the motion that was passed by the council was intended to enter that information into the record, but not to conduct another public hearing.
Oh, I didn't know.
I want Rod to speak to that. Rod?
Yes, I mean, if the council's was remanding it back with instructions to gather additional information and to review and reconsider the comparison, what they used for the comparison, to make sure that they accurately reflected an appropriate mitigation for the parking issue. This council didn't seem that it was remanding it back for a brand new proceedings. You specifically were interested in a issue on parking, and that's what you seem to focus on. And so, I mean, you could, if you found that the board was completely off base and wrong and there was nothing to do that, you could have remanded it back for new proceedings, but that wasn't the findings from this body.
Okay.
I was ignorant. So
you were what?
I was ignorant to.
Don't be so hard on yourself. All of us are that way from time to time. So.
In trying to learn how to do that, but I did want criteria 7 to be considered and more fully because of that cumulative impact piece, and because the problem I had was the fact that it's not a business, it's an educational institution. So how does that work?
I think Bill had that in there, the remand to check on criteria number 4 and number 7.
Yeah, that's what the amendment.
So it's
covered.
already,
Okay, so it's-
Correct.
It's in there.
So the amendments, so the amended language would
Right.
give the board direction that they needed to review criteria number 4 and 7 in light of the new information that the council wished the board to have. So the additional parking counts during that noon hour to assess what appeared to be the primary focus of the council was the parking mitigation. If we misinterpreted the motion that the council made, this is the
That
appropriate
was me
time
bumbling.
period
Thank you for
for
your
us to
help.
make sure that we, this is the council's decision, and the intent this evening is to have the council confirm that this was the direction they wish to provide to the board, and then the council can approve that decision, and they will be transmitted to the board.
I do have another question.
Okay.
It had to do with, we had been, you were trying to help me figure out the times, and I didn't understand, are we going to just look at the times now, or are you going to compare it to times of parking over the course of the school year, and can you do that? I mean, because the number of people in our community is
Diminished.
diminished.
Yes. As we discussed, and that was an active point of discussion on the meeting of June 5th, is
Yeah.
that is a reality of what's happened now, is that students are no longer, or many of the students have left the community for the course of the summer. Staff's suggestion at that time is we would recount at 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. to match the original counts, and we'd also count at the 12:30 additional time period that the council wished to have collected for the board's review. And then we could compare whether parking utilization went up during the noon hour as compared to the 9 and 2, and then we can correlate that against the information that was collected before students were released for the summer. That is really the best thing we can do at this point in time.
Okay.
So we will collect that information along with the 12:30 count as the council requested. We will try to extrapolate from that the difference in how that demand changes over that time period so that the board would have at least that information. But that is really the best thing, I guess, that we felt we could do at this point in time.
I have another question.
Rod?
I was just going to say, and with the instructions back to the Board of Adjustment, when they make their decision, they have to address these issues. So they've already had their decision that they had. Now that there's new information, they can deliberate, and then they'll have to account for that information in their new decision.
And they'll deliberate based on the information that they've got, the criteria from what was asked by
Correct.
this
What was
body,
already in the record and the new information from the study.
from the study. Okay? Jim?
As the seconder of this motion, when it was made, this was my understanding of what we were trying to do. That we were not going to try to make them start over, but to just consider the things that were the main points of the appeal. And I think you've covered that very well.
No, I appreciate
So
the direction.
I would move to approve the proposed appeal decision and remand instructions
As proposed.
as proposed.
All right, I second.
With the
With
amendment
the
as proposed by
amendment.
staff, just want
Right.
to make sure that is in there.
And I'll second.
Okay. Okay, Jim's got a motion by Catherine, second, to go ahead and approve the proposed appeal decision and remand the instructions back to the Board of Adjustment. Did you get the rest of that, what they said?
With the amendment.
Okay. Further discussion? Start the roll with John.
I'm not really sure what I'm voting on here.
Let's do
John,
it.
it's amending this appeal to go back to the Board of Adjustment to consider 4 and 7. And it has to do, based on the fact, with whatever the findings from the new parking. Is that correct, Bill? You want to explain that a little deeper, so John?
So this is the order remand and the specific instructions of what the council wishes the board to consider on remand for this application.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Walter?
The comment by maybe Jim and the clerk were with amendment. What was that?
It's number.
So that was the language we went over, I'm sorry,
Red part of
already
it.
moved ahead. to
But he
that.
changed it
Number
from the packet.
3.
The packet didn't have that in it.
To add the specific
Number 3 was
references to
different in the
criteria
packet.
number 4 and 7 that was in the motion that the council made.
Okay. I'm good.
So there will be no new testimony, there will
No
be...
new public hearing, John. They're going to talk about the fact of what they get, what they receive from these instructions, as this council did, and with whatever that public hearing information was before. That's the only thing they're going to listen to. It's not a new public hearing.
Well, that being the case, I guess I'll vote for it.
Okay,
Don't
Catherine?
like to, but
Aye.
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 Okay. So the motion is approved to go back. Bill and you, of course, will be instructing the Board of Adjustment on